All right, we're at the top of the hour, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. A couple of housekeeping items. This is where we are, the insurance agency communication in the age of COVID-19 webinar. We're going to talk a little bit about the necessity of communicating differently today, but the advantages it can give us for tomorrow. I am Kevin McDonald. I'm a managing partner with Confluency Solutions. For those of you that are on the webinar, may be less familiar with Confluency. We're a digital marketing company. We've been around since 2004. We work exclusively with independent insurance agents. You can learn more about us at our website. I'm not going to really focus too much on our services broadly, but more narrowly on communication with the webinar. So what are we going to talk about? How long is it going to last? And what's going to happen after that? This is sort of a companion piece to a fairly lengthy blog post we did recently. It's on the Confluency website now. And we're sort of just looking at one aspect of that blog post, using video, using technology to get a more personal connection with our clients and with the community and with prospective clients. So we're going to look at two specific examples. Should last about 25 minutes. We'll do a little Q&A at the end. If you have questions along the way, that's fine, but it's just me here today, so I can't be, at my age, I can only be so distracted by questions while I'm trying to talk. So feel free, though, to just weigh in with questions. There'll be a recording. We'll email that on a follow-up. The video, the follow-up will be, the recording will be on YouTube, and will also be on the Confluency website, most likely. So that's that. Let me just go ahead and jump in here. So today, nobody really needs to be told things are different. Things are different than they were yesterday. They'll be different tomorrow. This whole coronavirus thing is pretty fluid, and people are using technology. I was reminded of this morning. I was on a text session with a friend of mine in Calgary, Alberta, and her kids live a few blocks away from her. She hasn't seen them in a month. So that's sort of the state of lockdown there. And people are using technology to maintain a personal connection with family and friends in a way they weren't a month or two ago. So you've all heard about the Zoom cocktail meetings, the Zoom Seder at Passover, things like that, people using Facebook. And you have to wonder what's going to stick after all this is over, because we will come out of this. So is it going to be enough as we come out of this to just offer email, phone, and web forms, or will people's expectations really be different about business communication options? That's a rhetorical question, just something to keep at the back of your mind as we look at these two examples. So example one are webinars and live stream events you can do at your agency, similar to what we're doing here right now. So live stream and webinars are a little bit different, not a lot. For the webinar, you need a platform like Zoom that we're using today. There are other ones like GoToMeeting or WebEx. With live stream, you can live stream an event on YouTube, on Facebook. You can do it technically anyway on LinkedIn, but LinkedIn, you have to ask for access, and they're only granting access to brands that have fairly large followings. So right now, larger brands, but there's some advantages to doing the live stream, and you can do them as we are today at the same time. So we're on Zoom, but we're also on YouTube Live. So what would you even talk about if you were going to do a webinar or a live stream event? What do you have to communicate? And the fact is, you know a lot more about insurance and the insurance industry than your clients do, than your prospective clients do. And you might think to yourself sometimes, nobody really wants to hear about that, but they do want to hear about it, and they need to hear about it. And in fact, I feel certain from conversations I've had with many of our agents in the last 3-4 weeks, getting a lot of questions about business interruption and how does that apply or how does it not apply? And we all know how it applies, but clients don't. And that could be one thing you share, maybe talk about a little bit, explain. Teleworking is another thing. There's a lot of folks who have never worked from home before, but now because of the whole sheltering in place requirements, they are. So how does insurance apply to that? Business property, workers' comp. And I mentioned before, this is a fluid situation. So the carriers are going to communicate things to you each week, each day maybe, how they're handling this, how they're approaching this. Deliveries, that's just kind of a placeholder for me. There's a lot of folks who have been furloughed, so they don't have their regular jobs, but they're picking up extra work, maybe delivering groceries or food from a restaurant or something like that. How does auto insurance apply there? How does other kinds of insurance apply there? And then the last item on this short list, there's other things that I could have put on the list, but the last thing isn't really so much an insurance issue, but it's a safety issue. So that kids being online isn't a new thing. However, as we go back to school on the internet, distance learning, kids are exposed to different technology than they were exposed to before. And how does that sort of impact your safety in the household and things like that? So there's a few things you could talk about there on a webinar or a live stream. How is the industry reacting to all of this? Is there any chance of coverage liberalization? You know, a lot of folks, and you've heard this, God knows I have, I paid my premium, you know, for 10 years, never filed a claim, $20,000, I file a claim for $2,000 and you're not paying it, that's not fair. That's not how insurance works, right? So that might bear some education, some explaining. Legislative requirements. I'm aware of a dozen, maybe 18 states where legislation has been introduced to retroactively apply business interruption to COVID-19 closures, right? And we all know that insurance policies aren't priced based on covering something that could happen to everybody, something that could bankrupt an insurance company. But there is some precedent for covering things like this through the insurance market and allowing insurance companies to recoup the claims and the losses through assessments and things like that. So that might be something that you talk about. And certainly there is a lot of information coming out every day about premium deferrals or rebates that companies are offering. And there's going to be more on that in the coming days and weeks. Another thing you could talk about, what is your agency doing? So you may be working from home, you may have other employees working from home, you can let folks know about that, what precautions you're taking to keep your staff safe. If you do permit people to come into the office, what are the limitations there? What are the precautions you're taking to sanitize surfaces people may come in contact with? What new technology are you using to communicate with people now that we're sort of where we are, right? So those are some more things you can talk about. Sharing updates, things we covered in the last slides. Charity, there may be some things that you're engaged with in your agency, local charities to help people out. More broadly, in your community, what's going on? There's a lot of things sort of, you know, breaking information, if you like. Not everybody knows about it. And this may be an opportunity for more of an open forum or to invite guest hosts on webinars and live stream events. So what's out there for local businesses to help them get through this locally at the state level, whatever you know that other folks might not know. Same thing, families and employees, what's out there, food banks, whatever, what's open, what's not open. This is going to change over time. What do you need to be able to pull this off? Excuse me while I get a little sip of water here and see if I can keep my voice. The answer is not too much. If you're going to do a webinar, you're going to need a platform like Zoom that we're using here. We use GoToMeeting as well. And there's not a ton of difference between those two things. There are some differences. We're using Zoom here primarily because it supports live stream on Facebook as well as YouTube. So if you have a YouTube account or a channel set up for your agency, that's free. Facebook, same thing. You can do live stream events there. And eventually, of course, LinkedIn will be open to us as well. Email, you're going to use it to let people know about upcoming events, do any follow-ups you might do. And then if you're doing a webinar or a live event, there will be a recording of that, which can be included on your website. And often there's a place for that, sort of in a blog post. There's a lot of different ways to distribute content like videos once you've produced it, right? So in terms of hardware, what do we need to be able to do webinars and live stream? And the short answer is computer and a good internet connection, not too much. Having said that, the onboard cameras and the onboard microphones that come with a computer are not great. They're okay. If you want to just kind of try this out, that's probably all right. But the cost to upgrade to a better camera and a better microphone is a couple $100. It's not much. We're using a Logitech 922C for a camera, and for a microphone, we're using a Yeti Blue. They're both USB devices. You just plug them into the computer, off you go. That's all you have to do. Okay, I should mention here, we're kind of working kind of not at the 30,000 foot level, but maybe the 10,000 foot level. To get into the more nuts and bolts of this would be a whole separate webinar. And I sense there's some demand for that. So on the follow-up, if you want to let me know what your thoughts are on it, likely we'll do a webinar or two where we get into the more the details of the how-to details for setting this up, running it, doing the recordings, grabbing the videos, putting it on your website, that kind of thing. So let's look at another example. I'm going to call this packaged reviews. And so the fact is, we all do account reviews, but the reality is you can only do them for accounts of a certain size. So if I go to one extreme and I say you've got an account that has an auto insurance policy with minimum liability limits, right, on one vehicle, it's going to be tough to do reviews for them, and there may not be a lot of fruit to be gained from doing it anyway. But you can come down from those very large accounts and do reviews that have a personal impact by using technology. So how do we do that? Let's start with sort of what happens today. Typically, there's an email offer that comes out that says, hey, we want to do a review. Maybe you want somebody to fill a questionnaire out. And maybe a phone call actually happens, but there's usually a lot of back and forth, easy for me to say, where, you know, what day works for you, what time, and often you just never really get together. And there's nothing very personal in this sort of communication sequence, right? So a different approach for doing reviews would start with a video email. So again, the blog post we did, we talk about some different communication tools, how and where you would use them. One of those is video email. There's a number of different platforms you could use. One of the ones we talk about in the blog post is Screencast-O-Matic. It's pretty inexpensive. Another one is there's a Chrome plugin, which is free. The one we're using to do video email, and it's been very effective, is BombBomb. And there are a number of advantages to using BombBomb, not the least of which is an animated GIF that shows up in your email that results in more people actually clicking and looking at the video than they do when you're using other methods to get a video out there through email. There's some other advantages to BombBomb, like being able to track opens, being able to do videos and manage your video emails from a mobile device, which you can't really do with the other ones. So more detail in the blog post on that. In addition to the video email, the sort of the offer, you can include links to what I'm going to call explainer videos. So there are only a small number of situations with personal insurance accounts or small business accounts that people need to sort of be aware of, think about, maybe do policy limitations. Maybe there's 8 or 10 or a dozen of those. So your limits aren't adequate, right? There's things that are excluded like flood and earthquake. There are other exclusions like, you know, loss of jewelry or things like that. So a quick explainer video that you can just sort of keep on the shelf and include a link, right? The videos don't have to be long. In fact, they shouldn't be long. 2 minutes or less is best. They don't have to be really slick. In fact, that's better as well, but they can be personal. So we're going to take a quick look at an explainer video talking about liability coverage. So what points do we want to make in the video? What is liability insurance? One way to look at it is it's part of a comprehensive financial plan. It's the defensive part of that, right? What are adequate limits when we're talking about your situation, your appetite for risk, what you have at risk? What are some ways to handle that? Umbrella, what are the costs of increasing your limits and things like that? And then disability and life aren't really liability, of course, but and I wouldn't get into detail in a video about liability limits, but it does give you kind of an opportunity to segue into other explainer videos that maybe are something people should be aware of or take note of. So let's take a quick look at an explainer video. This lives on YouTube right now. Did this the other day. We're not going to play too much of this.
Best way to think about
and the audio may be a little low because we're broadcasting it through Zoom. I'm going to go ahead and pause this now. I don't really like my face there. Yeah, whatever. I don't like my face anyway. So a couple of points I want to make with this video. It's not very long. It's 1:50. When the video was done, and it was 1:54, I think, and I clipped the beginning of it, right? So you have, if your phone is less than 4 years old, you probably have the ability to do some minor editing to videos, like clipping it, whether it's an iPhone or an Android. And that's typically all you would need to do. Nothing really slick about the production of this. I've got the pool as a backdrop on purpose because I'm going to talk about attractive nuisance and the liability exposure that brings to the table, right? And that's something you're going to want to kind of do. Have a backdrop that's visually evocative of what it is you're talking about, if you can. All right, so let me go back over to the slide. So that's kind of the long and short of that. What do you need to be able to do videos like this? Again, video email, BombBomb, something we use and recommend. YouTube, so once you've done the explainer videos, you can host them on YouTube. You get some SEO benefit for that. Those same videos you can then take and embed on a web page on your website, right, to kind of fill out some Q&A there. You're going to want to, I think, make it easier for people to make an appointment with you rather than this email back and forth, what day, what time, that works for me, no, that doesn't work for me. So there's some really inexpensive tools. We use TimeTrade, but we've used Calendly for certain purposes. And all they do is they show somebody the available time on your calendar. You can block other times, and they'll let somebody set an appointment up with you. It's automatically added to your calendar, kind of cuts down on some of the steps and some of the back and forth. And then video editing. If I go back to this video, you notice there's a logo in here. I'm not aware of any video editing tools that are on your phone if you wanted to do that, but there's some very inexpensive and simple video editing suites out there. I think we're using Movavi for this, which is probably no more than $30 or $40 a year just to be able to insert the logo there. So pretty simple. Hardware, what do you need to be able to sort of pull this off? Again, the computer, ideally if you're going to upgrade your camera and your microphone, that's a good idea. And then you can do video sitting at your desk or sitting in your office. It's generally a better idea, though, to sort of go out in the wild, right, and have a backdrop or a location that's relevant to what you're talking about in the explainer video. So in order to do that, all you really need is a phone and a tripod. That's it. If you wanted to get a little bit slick about it, you could get a gimbal. A gimbal is a device that's been used in filmmaking and cinematography. It's basically a frame that a camera sits in. So as you move the camera around, the gimbal levels it out and smooths things out, smooths the the picture out, the video out. So as you move side to side or up, down, or forward and backwards, you get this sort of cinematic effect. And companies that have made drones that allow cameras to be onboarded have built technology that's very affordable. And they make these things, they're handheld for phones. So you get that same kind of effect. You can kind of move around with the camera, something if you want to experiment with. If you have kids or grandkids who are involved in sports, it can be fun just for that alone. So we use it for different things, and it's worth checking out. So that's kind of technology, making a personal connection, the two examples, quick summary, why even think about this? We're going to have some downtime, and it's a good time to think about doing things a little bit differently so that we get a jump on our competition coming out of this, so that we meet and exceed people's expectations going forward. That's really the whole thing. So with that, I'm going to take a quick look and see if anything's come in on the Q&A, and I'll answer a couple of quick questions here. And again, we'll do the follow-up email, so if I miss anything, you'll be able to pose some questions that way. How am I doing? Okay. It's a little weird not seeing the streets with cars in it and not getting around, but I'm in Florida, so we're sheltering in place, but it's a little more liberal than it is in some other places, and we don't really have the same number of cases. And then glass half full, about an hour and a half drive from the Georgia border, and I guess they're opening up today, so maybe I can get a haircut up there or something. Let's see what else we got. Is there a cost to BombBomb? There is, and I believe there's an individual license level, $30 a month. There's no commitment. That includes most of the functionality. If you want to go up to the next level where you can see who's open videos and there's a few other things added in there, it's about $50 a month. And I think they have an annual payment plan. So effectively you're locked in for 12 months, and it's about $50 a month. So that's the BombBomb cost. All right, that's about it. Again, I appreciate everybody taking a few minutes. Hope everybody's staying safe. And there'll be some other webinars coming up. I think we'll probably get into a little bit more nuts and bolts, some of the things we've talked about here. Hope everybody stays safe, and good luck.